Taxes, taxes, profit off of taxes. In this video, you're going to learn how to profit off of taxes by spending more money. Now, when I heard that spending more money can save you money, something didn't register. So I had to call up the guy who told me it, a real tax professional, and we had a 1 hour back and forth on all sorts of tax tricks that could actually reward you for spending more money. One example he told me that shocked me was a client of his spent about $4,000 on a new computer, or she could have just paid $4,000 to the government. We also discuss how having a side hustle for the sake of tax write-offs can be extremely beneficial, even if that side hustle doesn't produce much income. The tax advantages are just phenomenal if you know what you're doing. Now, I further challenged him talking about apps that do taxes for you, like TurboTax. Why would you need a tax professional when you have TurboTax? Well, he explains that you may not, and he discusses the reasons why you would. He also talks about how do you know when you have a great tax professional and when you have someone who just wants to have a whole bunch of clients so they could get paid. So enjoy this video. Welcome to my channel, by the way, Financialism, where we expand our wealth growth mindset. Subscribe, like, and enjoy this live.
We are about to talk about taxes. I hate taxes. And someone's going to come in here and be like, I love taxes, or dealing with taxes. So I don't really know how taxes work all too well, but we're about to find out. I'm going to learn with everyone here, and I am so excited because we're going to break some stereotypes about spending money. Because supposedly the thing is, he told me that you can save money by spending money, and that triggered me. Here we go. This is going to be radical because I believe that some of my own beliefs are going to get crushed right now.
Hey, how are you? Let me close this behind me.
Yeah, super great. How are you?
Good to
Introduce
see you.
yourself.
So for those who don't know me, my name is Shmuel Eagle. I'm the founder and owner of Eagle Preparations. You can find me online at myeagleprep.com. You can find all my information, my email, my contact info. And yeah, I'm really, really excited to be here.
I am so happy that you're here. I'm just typing a summary of what this is about, and I'm going to pin it. And if anyone has any like tax questions, I'm sure, or especially like general questions about taxes, you can comment down below, and I will definitely pin it up. Can you tell us how you got into this world of taxes? Because taxes is something that people hate, and you were like, you know what? I'm going to make my life revolve around that hatred.
So I love it.
Tell
And what I love, I'll preface by saying one of my favorite parts about what I do is that I get to take this, what other people perceive as stress, and turn it into enjoyment. And so what I hope for all of my customers is that they use the service and they come in with a stressful situation, they walk away, say, wow, that was nothing, no big deal. So just a little bit about how I got into this business. It wasn't some magical story where from the time I was a little kid, I was obsessed with numbers, or while I'm sitting in math class, I'm sitting in the back, trying to figure out the magic formula to do taxes. It really started off when I was in school. I was 18 years old, and I was the guy that was always into doing things. So extracurriculars, setting up programs, setting up guest speakers, that was my thing. If there was something to be done, that was my style. And somebody came over to me. He had been in the business for about 8 years, and he said, you know what? I think you'd be good at this. You're a doer. So a lot of people out there that just talk about doing stuff, but you go out there and you do it before you even talk about it. You should give this a try. And so what I always tell people is, especially when they're younger, when you're getting into the world of getting a job, starting a career, don't look over any potential. If you have an offer that comes your way, something that you think is possible, go for it. I figured, what's the worst thing that could happen? Worst case scenario, I get a little bit of job experience. I got something to add to my resume. Best case scenario, I learn about finance. I can do something in this field. And never did I think that I would have the best case scenario, which is that I get to work in this field permanently. I have my own business now.
That is radical because it's so rare, especially in like a capitalistic society, to find labor that you sincerely just enjoy and it builds and grows your soul. So that's really cool to hear. Now, we DM'd a little bit and you told me a story, right, about a client that kind of, I was shocked and I was like, you know what? Let's do a whole live. Let's just talk about it so people can hear it. Can you talk about the story of the client that you told me about? Do you remember that story?
So maybe you can refresh me, because I'll tell you this. There's so many stories that come up, that just incredible things that happen to people. But the story that I usually like to share when I'm telling people about it is, I had a woman who came to me. This is from this year, and she was really stressed. And this is actually a good story about how on paper somebody could be making all this money, and on the back end things aren't as good as they seem. So this is a woman who came to me. She on paper made six figures. So you look at that, you say, wow, she made a lot of money. She made, I think, probably $350,000 last year. And so you think, good for her. Wow, good job. But she starts saying, but you don't understand. It's $350 because $350,000 because I own property. And three of my properties this year had leaks or mold or other damage, and I spent close to all of my money repairing my properties. And so she, on the back end, owes all this money in taxes. She owed, when she came to me and she was looking to do it herself, she owed about $38,000 in taxes. And so you're thinking, okay, for somebody who made $350,000, $38,000 in taxes, a little more than 10%. Okay, no problem. You made a lot of money. I hope if I have that much money, then I'll have $38,000 sitting around. That's what we want to think. That's what we want to think, that when you have all this money, it means you have all this money sitting around. But as we said, in reality, she spent a ton of money on her properties. So she came to me. We spent about 3 days going over reports, figuring out her expenses, going over every penny. And at the end of the day, she walked away owing about $850. So pretty good.
You're
Pretty
gonna
good for
have to fill
everybody involved.
the gap there. How did you make that work? I mean, obviously, like it's a business, you can't reveal everything, but I think that going from the 38K to $800, like you got to give us one thing about it.
So I try my best to keep it as transparent as possible, which means to say, I don't want a client of mine to come and say, you know what, I can only get this savings if I use this person. Rather, I want you to use me because you know that not only am I going to get you the best savings, but I'm going to give you the best service. So I think the first thing that we did was break down the obvious stuff. And you'd be amazed how many things people pass up so quickly because they're using a program that isn't asking them the right questions, and so they're skipping over stuff. So, let's say you use one of these self-preparing softwares and it asks, how much money did you make? And what were your expenses? And you think, expenses? I don't even know. I don't know what I spent my money on. And so next thing you know, it doesn't prompt you. It doesn't ask you what's next. And so you're left skipping to the next step. And all of a sudden you owe $38,000 and you say, where did it all go? So the first thing we do is we break down the basics. Where you made $3,000 this month. Where did that $3,000 go? Do you have a home office? Are you paying rent? Are you buying yourself a computer? Are you buying yourself a phone? Do you have to drive to work every day? Where does that money go? And you'd be amazed how much money is accounted for just by having an understanding of your finances, knowing where your money went. And so many people I come across, and they made, whether it's small amounts of money or large amounts of money, and they don't know where it went. They know how much money's left in the account at the end of the day, but where did the money go? The next step, once we figure out where did the money go and what are the basic expenses, is what are the extras? What are the things that you didn't even think were business related, but when you really come down to it, were business related? Which means to say, for the people who want to go out there and buy themselves a BMW, good for them. That's a luxury. But why don't you put that luxury to work? You want to have a car, payment that's $600 a month? Cool. Good for you. If that's your thing, go get it. But you're using that car for what? So if you're using that car to drive to and from the beach every day, you're doing it wrong. Rather, you should be using that car to drive to and from work every single day. You should be using it to drive to meetings. Heck, if you can use your car to have a meeting in your car, even better. But the point is that you're spending money on something that you want in life. You want to have a car. You want to have a nice place. You want to eat good food. Let that work for you.
Wow. So what I'm hearing is one, have a budget, which is kind of like what I preach day in and day out. Like, if you're going to be investing in stocks, you need to have a budget. You need to know how much goes into it. So when it comes to taxes, the surface level is yes, have a budget so we can focus on the obvious stuff. I'm taking notes, by the way, while we
Cool.
talk because I'm learning with everyone too. And speaking of everyone learning, like we were just talking about this earlier on the phone, that it is cool that with everything happening in the world, you choose to prioritize your financial health. That is a form of protest. That is a form of getting in ahead in an environment that doesn't necessarily want you to get ahead. So it's really cool right now that you guys are watching this, that you're tuned in, that you're learning about something that may come across as not the most fun thing to learn about, but I think that if you're watching this, it might be a little bit more fun for you than the average person. So kudos to everybody watching. The other thing that I just picked up from you is it reminds me of a post I made about leasing cars because everyone says if you're leasing a car, you're burning money. But the way that you just said that, I feel like you can actually write it off in a way that may be advantageous to you, where you're not buying the super expensive car, but you're leasing it and you can have your business meetings inside of it and do all these little hacks. And that's something that, I mean, I was gonna try to take you down and be like, okay, I want to save money with TurboTax. I don't want to pay for a professional.
Sure.
And by the way, this is not sponsored. Like, he's not paying me anything. Like, this is just genuine, like, information exchange. He saw what I was doing every day with stocks, and he was like, yo, but you never talk about taxes. Like, there's a whole world out there dedicated to this. So I was like, okay, let's break it down. So the extra stuff, like leasing a car and writing it off, is there anything else that's not like obvious that people can write off for their business? Anything that's on top of your head?
Sure. Lots of stuff. So most of us nowadays have a phone that might be six, seven, 800, 900, $1,000. What are you doing with that? You went out, you bought the phone because you wanted to have the newest iPhone. Now, did you need the newest iPhone? That's a question for another day. But again, put that to work for you. You make sure you're using your phone for work. If you have the option of answering work emails, making work calls, again, especially in these days where we're doing so much stuff virtually, do Zoom over your phone. Write off your phone bill every month. Again, another big expense is a home office. So everybody knows that if you have a home office, you can write off part of your rent. You can write off the desk that you buy or the printer. But how about your electric bill? How about your Wi-Fi bill? How about the what you're living in is your business. So you might as if you're teetering between should I get that faster speed internet or do I not really need it? Well, maybe I'm saving money by having that extra speed. Maybe that $80 a month instead of the $40 a month is actually going to save me money in the long run.
That's gnarly because I hate spending money. I'm always looking for the cheapest deals possible, the cheapest internet, the cheapest lease, the cheapest car. So we have a couple questions coming in, and we got two questions. The first one is, what would be the price of a professional? And I know you're also offering services, so if anyone's interested, you could always DM him. You could, yeah, I'm sure he'll have a good price. But can you tell us how do people find fair prices and all of that when we have TurboTax?
Sure. It's a really good question. And it's a question I answer all the time, which is number one, what is the price? And number two, why is your price justified? So for many people out there, they can use TurboTax for free or $50 or $130 or $180, depending on what their needs are. And you're going to go to a tax preparer, and I want to specify, make a little bit of a separation between tax preparers. So there are tax preparers who essentially are using TurboTax for you or using a preparer version of TurboTax for you. And so therefore, they don't have to worry about a license. They don't have to worry about paying any fees to the IRS for submitting. So for those people, if you're going to somebody, and this is something that you should be able to ask your tax preparer, what software are you using? And if your tax preparer tells you, I'm using TurboTax, or I'm using Intuit Link, or I work for H&R Block, then there most likely will be a premium on top of whatever the cost of the service will be. So let's say it's $50. So maybe he charges you an additional $50 to use the service, making it $100 total. That makes sense. If you're coming to somebody like me, who has a professional accounting software that's not TurboTax, that's not, for lack of a better word, a locked platform, which means that essentially I can put whatever I want down on the paper, the downside to that is that you really have to know what you're doing. There isn't going to be these red flags saying this is not correct. So if you're going to somebody who's using a professional accounting software, the next thing you want to find out is, do they actually know how to use that software? And what are their protections? So you want to make sure that they're protecting against things like audits, and that they're going to be there for you. You know, a lot of tax preparers, of course, they're going to answer the phone in January, but where's the guy going to be in August? So for me, when I decide my pricing, I base it on a couple things. Number one, what are your needs today? Which means to say, when we're looking at your return, how much money are you making? How many different forms of income do you have? How many different deductions do you have? Are you going to owe money? Or are you going to get a refund? So for those who, so to separate those, there are people who get a refund or a credit back from the IRS every year when they file. And there are people who owe money at the end of the year. Then you have to figure out what your needs are going to be outside of season. So I have customers who come to me, let's say we speak 5 hours a year throughout the year. And then I have customers who will contact me almost weekly. So those are two very different services. Usually what I tell people if they're getting a refund is, let's start with 10% of the refund as a base price and be willing to drop the price. The reason that I do that is I'm happy to come to you later and say, you know what? It was a much simpler process than we thought it was going to be from the beginning. I'm happy to charge you 6% and we'll call it a day. But I don't ever want to come back to somebody and say, you know what? You actually owe me more money. And something else that I do with my price that a lot of tax preparers cannot offer is that I get paid directly from the refund. So when you sit down with me, we file your taxes, you get up, you get to walk away. You don't have to worry about paying me. You don't have to worry about having me invoice you every week until your balance is paid off, or hassling you that you didn't have the money at the time. Because honestly, there's plenty of people who might be getting a $3,000 refund, but if they have to pay me $300 right now, they can't do it. And I understand that. So instead, you get up, you walk away. When you get approved, I get paid, which means that I only win when you win.
I love that. I love to hear that because we have so much business that's not accessible and so many ways to save money that's not accessible. Again, the more money you have, usually the easier it is to make money or to save money. So it's cool that you kind of charge off the back. And that also motivates you and other people in your position to work to save the most amount of money, because the more you save your clients, the more you make for yourself. And then if it was easy and labor intensive, you create kind of a long-term relationship by rewarding them and saying, listen, I'm going to be honest, it wasn't as much work as I expected. Here's some money back because it only took me so and so to do this. But again, you're a beast, so it's always going to take you so and so to do this.
Yeah.
There is another question, and I know with like the coronavirus and the pandemic and all of that, there's been rules that are changing like pretty rapidly and unexpectedly, and like I know the tax season has been extended, so there's so many quick changes happening. And she said that, I heard you can no longer write off a home office on taxes. Do you know anything about that?
Sure. It's a great question. And what I appreciate also is the need to make sure that you're doing things correctly, because there are deductions which you think exist. And again, especially if you're using an open software that's not going to give you a red flag saying you can't do this, you have to be very careful. So it's really important to have an understanding of how the process works and what's allowed. So there was a change in the tax bill about 2 years ago. It fully was implemented last year. So within that, a few things changed. The first, and the thing which applies to most people, is the standard deduction was doubled. So standard deduction, I don't know what you're talking about. The IRS has a set amount in place that says if you make this amount of money and you're an employee, which means that you're working on a W-2, i.e. having taxes taken out of every single paycheck that you're receiving, you get to have your first $12,000 tax-free. If you're a married couple, you get $24,000 tax-free. So within that, they also eliminated a lot of personal deductions. So we want to make sure that we separate personal deductions and business expenses. So again, what we were speaking about before is using your home office as a business, working from there, having meetings from there, making calls from there. That is a business expense. If you are an employee and you are doing the work of somebody else, then theoretically you can't deduct from that. And I actually have a great story that goes along with that. I had a customer who came to me a couple weeks ago, and he said, my issue is that I keep having more taxes withheld, and I always owe money at the end of the year. And I asked him, do you have any other forms of income? And he said, yeah, but not really much. I don't really want to get into it. And I said, well, why not? Let's get into it. Let's go all the way into it. And once we had a conversation, we realized that this was a business that the only reason he didn't want to go into it was because he wasn't making a real amount of money from it yet. And the real reason he wasn't making a lot of money from it was because he was dumping so much money into it. And what he didn't realize is that he's sitting on as I would call it, a deduction gold mine. All of that's deductible. But the way he's looking at it, he's only looking at it from his full-time job. So from his full-time job, because he's an employee, he can't deduct his home office. But that being said, he's doing graphic design solely at home. He bought himself a crazy computer setup. He has really, really good internet. He's spending all this money on it, and that is stuff that he can deduct. So something that you want to figure out for some people, and I let's say you were making $35,000 a year, and you're a full-time employee, and so you're not able to take advantage of a lot of these deductions that we're talking about. What if you did a little bit of tutoring on the side? What if you tutored somebody for, let's say, $50 a session, and over the course of the year you made an extra $2,000? That is self-employment income. Doesn't mean you have to have a business. Doesn't mean you have to have an LLC set up. Doesn't mean that you're some businessman wearing a suit. It means that you are working for yourself. That is considered a small business. So from that, you can deduct. So then you have to figure out a way to cross expenses and make sure that your life is an expense. So I hope that that answers the question, just to make sure that we're staying on topic. If you are an employee and you have to work at home, you cannot simply deduct expenses from that. But if you have a small business, meaning to say you're working for yourself in any capacity, you can write it off. So the customer followed up with, okay, so if I give you my situation exactly as it is now, you can save me all this money. And I told him, no. If we keep things exactly the same, no, you can't save money. But if you make this small change, meaning you start to separate your income, you start to realize how much money you're making on the side, all of a sudden, you're saving all this money because you're taxed as a whole. It's not that your self-employment income is taxed and you got to pay on that, and then all of a sudden you take your W-2 and you gain taxes on that. It's one lump sum. So if you can chip away at one, you may help the other.
Wow. I would have never thought of a lot of these questions just by going on TurboTax. Again, though, I am a very frugal person, and we got a couple questions. I am seeing them, and I will be pinning them. I'm a very frugal person, so like someone like me, now you got me leaning towards like getting a tax professional and all of that. But beforehand, I'd be like, I'll just do the 10 hours of research once in my life. But like who has that privilege and that freedom to do that? But
Sure.
it is really amazing what you're saying about these little tiny life changes that don't add too much effort or stress to your life can actually save you thousands of dollars. Like doing something like tutoring on the side, you can do it not for the tutoring income, but for the ability to write off what it opens up. That is phenomenal. So we have another question from one of my favorite people on the internet, Young Retiree by 33. I wrote a rap song for him that will be coming out in one of the YouTube videos that I'll be posting very soon. But he asked this: do you believe the goal should be to hit a $0 tax refund? What do you think?
It's a great question, and it really depends on your situation. So if you're a single guy or girl and you're making money on the side, self-employment, then your goal should be to hit $0. If you have a W-2, your goal is to get whatever you put back in. Now, obviously, there are things like Social Security and Medicare, which you're kind of paying into the system. You're not going to get that back. But if you put in money in taxes, in the best case scenario, you should be getting all of that money back. If you are eligible for things like earned income credit, or if you have kids, or if you're a student in college, then your goal is to get a tax refund. So I had somebody a couple weeks ago who got a $15,000 tax refund. And to give it away, this is not somebody that was making six figures. This is somebody that was making about $50,000 a year. And so he got a pretty nice sum, close to 25% of his income for the whole year, just as a tax refund, as a gift from Uncle Sam for having kids.
Oof. That is pretty cool. We have another question here, something that is actually a question that I also have, and it says, how can you verify that the person, aka you, that they're hiring isn't doing shady things basically? That ultimately it's your money and you're responsible for it. So if the person you hire is doing something under the table or something that shouldn't be happening, how do you avoid that? How do you prepare for that? How do you find an honest worker basically?
Absolutely. The first thing before you've even started the process is you should have a feeling of trust for the person you're working with. And I think that we deal with this in everyday life. I'm sure you've come across somebody in your life, maybe you knew them well, maybe you didn't know them at all, but something about the way that they were conducting themselves made you think, I don't know if I can trust this guy. And so the first thing is, if for any reason you're feeling like he's not being transparent with you, he or she is not being transparent with you, they're not giving you a full picture, you don't feel like they're answering your questions, they're just moving things along, and now they're telling you we're done, time to pay me, pull out. Walk away from that deal. And just to put it out there, you, no matter what is happening, no matter what information you've given to a tax preparer up till that point, they cannot submit anything without your permission, which means to say that no matter what stage of the process you're in, you can say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to continue with the service, and you have the right. So make sure you're standing up for yourselves and you're not having a tax preparer saying, no, 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 I already did the work. You're not going to walk away now. That is your right. That is your right to walk away. The
Wow.
second thing that you want to make sure is that this is somebody who is a qualified tax preparer, meaning that they have a license. So there are several different types of tax preparers. There are CPAs who deal specifically with business taxes. They may also deal with individuals, but most people who are a CPA are working for businesses, doing bookkeeping and business taxes, something in that capacity. You also have certified tax preparers who have what's called, the most basic form of a license is called a P10 license. A P10 license is basically just a license from the IRS that lets you prepare somebody's taxes and be paid. Technically, anybody can prepare anybody's taxes as long as they have the other person's permission, but only somebody with that license can be paid. The next thing you want to find out, if you're interested in electronic filing and you don't want them to use TurboTax, the next thing that you want to look into is, does that person have an EFIN license? Electronic Filing Identification Number is what I believe that stands for. I have an EFIN license. Not every preparer has an EFIN license, but a lot do. An EFIN license allows me to directly submit to the IRS without any mediary. So, for example, TurboTax will act as an e-filer for you. So, if you're a tax preparer without an EFIN license, you have one of two choices. You can either submit by paper, or you can use a company like TurboTax who will submit it electronically for you. So again, just to recap, the number one most important thing with your tax preparer is trust. And if you don't have trust, you're going to have a bad time. So I'll give you an example. I had a customer who, when he first started with me, was very skeptical, and he wanted to give me all of his information, but he said, I don't want to give you my social security number, which makes sense. You should be very careful with your social security number. Absolutely. Very careful. That being said, I told him that our relationship can't thrive under these circumstances. If you are having any issues trusting me in my service, then I'm the wrong guy for you. If you believe in my service, if you believe you can trust me, if you're getting the feeling that I'm going to do things that are in your best interest, then you should give me your social security number. And so the main thing that you should do is trust your instincts. And again, you have rights as an individual. Your tax preparer cannot submit anything. If something was done fraudulently without your knowledge, if they added things that weren't discussed, they can be held liable. They can be stuck with fines, not just for whatever that you had to pay, but they can also get, I believe, for every mistake you make or deduction that was not discussed or not allowed, it's a $650 fine per.
Okay. So it seems that there are some checks and balances for shady people, that the law kind of protects the client over the tax professional. One thing you mentioned is, if you are getting into arguments or anything like that, you have the right to walk away without paying them because you disagreed with their services. There is the other thing on your checklist is, look them up, check if they're a qualified professional.
Absolutely.
And finally, the law will punish them for everything not discussed. There's a $650 punishment. Now, there are a few other questions here that I think are really, really good. And one of them is, would any person benefit from hiring an individual tax preparer? Or if your situation is very simple, would you be better off doing something like TurboTax?
The answer is no. Not every person needs a tax preparer. That being said, it's a decision that you should make year by year. So meaning to say, if this year TurboTax was the best choice for you, it doesn't mean it wasn't. It will be the next choice for you next year. And I have people who call me all the time that I tell them, look, I'm happy to do this for you. If you'd like, here's the price, but you'd be much better off doing it on TurboTax. TurboTax offers free filing for a lot of people. Now, the obvious question that people are, they're a multi-billion-dollar company, so something doesn't add up. If they're filing you for free, but somehow they're making billions of dollars, where does that money come from? The answer is that they're counting on your situation growing, and they're planning on you sticking with them, and that as your needs grow, your price will increase.
Wow.
So that's their system, is that they look at it as you're coming in, you're free. I would say it's marketing, really. It's a marketing perk for them that they're gaining clients for free, but then they're planning that you'll use them over the course of several years. If you are a person who has a W-2, you made $20,000, let's say, you had $300 withheld in taxes throughout the year, and so you don't have any fancy deductions or any credits or anything like that, there's not anything that any preparer is going to be able to do more than get you that $300 back that you put in. Because you can't, unless you're eligible for credits, you can't pull money out of nowhere. Although some people may say, is your accountant a magician? Whatever. That's a discussion for another day. But you can't make something out of nothing. So if all it is that's sitting there is $300, you'd be much better off filing for free and getting the full $300 than paying a preparer. That's the right thing. But that being said, again, you want to make sure that you're reassessing every year to find out what your needs are. And most preparers, I would say, offer some form of a free estimate. And if they don't, I would say maybe make sure you're doing your due diligence and looking around. But if somebody comes to me, I'll look at their situation, no matter how simple it is, and I'll tell you, you're going to want to use me, and this is why, or you're going to want to use TurboTax, and this is why.
That is awesome, and it kind of reminds me of how brokerages give a free stock when people sign up, like Robinhood or Webull, which actually you can make a pretty good side hustle out of that, by the way. And if you want my link, DM me, because we all get free stocks for that. But they're expecting you to become a lifelong customer. So when you're trading stocks, it's very similar to the model that was just discussed, where they're losing money on you initially, but over the long run, you're going to be investing hundreds, hopefully hundreds of thousands. And if you're in this chat, you're probably going to be investing millions one day. And they're going to be profiting a couple pennies every trade, and that will lead to a lot of money. So another question, and again, this is totally not my area, and I'm learning with everyone. And again, I want to repeat, if you are in here focusing on your financial health right now, that is phenomenal, because I don't know, but my mom believes in horoscopes and stuff, and she's saying the stars are realigning themselves. So if you're in here and you're realigning yourself with the financial health mindset, that is fantastic. The next question here is, can you explain Savers Credit? Is that something that you're familiar with? This is a credit that ties both in with investing and taxes.
So there are several different credits which tie into investing. The one that will apply to most people is the credit of a Roth IRA. So for those who don't know, and I think I should really turn it over to you to explain the difference between a Roth IRA and an IRA and a 401k. But there are all types of benefits that are given. They are limited. So I think, for example, with the Roth IRA, you can only be contributing $6,000 a year. But the IRS considers that pre-tax income. So what does it mean, pre-tax income? It's a great question. When you're receiving your income on a W-2, when you get your paycheck every 2 weeks, I should say your pay stub every 2 weeks, you're having taxes taken out. That money is considered post-tax. So for example, if any of you have a job that reimburses for car expenses or reimburses for meal expenses, this is what's called pre-tax income. Because again, let's say I work for you and I'm spending $100 driving around every month. If you're going to give me my money post-tax, all of a sudden I worked for you. I put in $100, but now I'm getting back $88. Something with that seems funny. So there's all types of credits which exist for pre-tax income. So again, everybody knows with post-tax income, you're looking to try to get a tax refund. You want to try and get some money back. But what you can do is you can take income that you get from your wages and you can put that money into an account, let's say a Roth IRA, and that money will be considered post-tax from the time that you put it in, meaning that as long as you leave it long enough, that money will not be taxed. There are pre-tax credits, which means to say you can take money and you can invest it. That money is not taxed until you take it out. And there's different benefits. Again, I think I'd be better off turning that over to you to discuss the benefits of a Roth IRA versus an IRA or a 401k. And these are things that you should assess based on your needs and your income. And again, reassess constantly. Just because something works for you today does not mean it will work for you tomorrow.
Right. And just real quick to address one of the questions down there, if you do contribute more than 6K to an IRA account, and remember, you can only contribute up to 6K to both accounts. So a Roth IRA and a regular IRA, the total contributed amount is $6,000. And it's only the traditional IRA where you're contributing pre-tax dollars, whereas the Roth IRA, you already paid the taxes on it. I prefer that. I prefer to do the quick cost now and then never worry about taxes again and get like huge gains. But there are definitely advantages to using the traditional IRA, especially if you don't qualify for the Roth. If you're making about, I believe it's something like over $122,000. Don't quote me on that, but it's around there. You cannot contribute directly to your Roth IRA. It's supposed to be an advantage, especially for lower income folks, that they can grow their money without really worrying about capital gains, and it is an incentive to get into the stock market. If you contribute more than 6,000, there will be a penalty, I believe. I will have to review that, to be honest. I remember reading up on that, and you never want to do that. Ever. And another thing that people don't know about IRAs is you can contribute 6,000, yes, but you can always pull that 6,000 out, right? You can take out your original contribution that year. You cannot put it back in. Otherwise, you will be penalized. So if you're investing 6,000, it grows to 10,000 in that year. You pull the 6,000 out. You can't put $1 more in for that year, even though there's only 4,000 left. I hope that math kept up. We got one more question here, and it says, should you
If I can add
always
one
claim
thing
zero?
before we move on
Yeah.
to that topic, in addition to the $6,000 that everybody knows you can put in for the current year, as long as it's before tax day, so on a regular year it's April 15th, this year it's July 15th, you can also contribute to the previous year and get tax benefits on that. So meaning to say, as long as you're investing early, if for whatever reason it's March, or in this case, let's say it's June, and you've already maxed out your 6,000 for the current year, go back and put money into the prior year. If you are if you have already filed taxes by the time you want to do this, you will not receive the same benefits. But that being said, it still helps for your future. So if you're trying to put more money into your Roth IRA, that is a great way to do it if you haven't maxed out the previous year.
Right. That is an important point because especially now with the virus that again we mentioned earlier, there are all these little subtle changes and you have more time to contribute to your 2019. Is it June 15th yet? June 15th. Wait,
Close
when
to
was
the
it?
15th. We got a month to go.
Right, so still one more month you can be contributing for 2019. So if you haven't maxed it out, I would be putting in on Charles Schwab. If you use it, you can it'll ask you what year are you putting it in for, 2019, 2020, or 2021. You will just pick 2019. So in that sense, technically right now, if you have $18,000, you can max out 2019, 2020, and I believe even 2021, and it'll count for those specific years. So you will have that money growing there already, and you will not have to think about it. But who has 18,000 extra dollars sitting around right now? Maybe like two of you. And if you are in here and you have that extra money, buy me lunch one day. So the other question is, should you always claim zero on your W-2 form?
So this is a great question, and I want to preface by explaining what this means for those people who don't know what it means to claim zero. We're speaking about exemptions. So when you started your job, or perhaps every year, you might get this piece of paper with a bunch of crazy information on it called the W-4. The W-4 is a form you're going to fill out, give to your employer, which they will submit to the IRS. that will estimate what your tax should be. So some examples of things which will be on that form is, what is your filing status? Are you married? Are you single? Do you have any kids? And these things will factor into trying to properly estimate how much money should be withheld from your wages. So now getting back to the question, there is a section on the W for exemptions, which means you could say, I have myself and I either 0 or 1, and I might have my spouse, and that might be another one, and I may have my kid.
We're lagging. There we go.
In business never stops. So no, but to stay on topic, so if when you get that form and you look at the exemptions, you may be trying to figure out, I don't even know what exemptions are. How many do I figure out? I don't know. Am I 1? Am I 0? Do I count? So why does it matter? Number one, the reason that it matters is because it will determine how much money is taken out from every one of your checks, which could mean the difference of, depending on how much you're making and how much is being taken out, it could be the difference of $20 a week. It could be the difference of $200 a week. It really depends on your situation. There is a benefit to putting 0. Why is there a benefit to putting 0? Because then you know you're good. Meaning to say, unless you made a lot of money, which we're talking, if you made $90,000 or more, most of the time, if you put 0, you had the right amount of taxes taken out. Does that mean you're going to get a big tax refund at the end of the year? Probably not, but you know you did the right thing. If you're calculating how many exemptions you are, and for whatever reason your situation changes, so let's say you get a raise and all of a sudden you're making more money, so you have to make sure that that's adjusted. There is also a way you can go online. There are tax calculators which are free to use, and you can look up, here's how much money my salary is supposed to be for the year. Or if you're working hourly, you can calculate, approximately how many hours you think you're going to be working and what that pay will equal to. And you can see how much should be withheld. Once you know that information, you can make a choice. Some people want to be exact. They want it to end up at 0, and they don't want to worry about it. Again, the problem is what if you miscalculate? So my suggestion, if that money is not make or break for you, which means that if that $20 or $200 or $50, whatever it is not right now, this second, going to make it so that you can or can't pay your rent or can and can't buy food, you'd be better off paying a little bit extra in, because number one, best case scenario, you paid off all your taxes and now you created almost a little bit of a savings for yourself and you get a nice little tax refund at the end of the year. But worst case scenario, you're not going to get stuck with a bill at the end of the year.
Okay. What I learned, I just want to summarize kind of everything that we went through, because I learned a few things here too. And I'm a very frugal person. If there's a reason not to spend money, I am not going to spend money. What I'm learning here is, and these are again my own personal revelations, is sometimes paying for a tax professional may not be worth it if you're in a position that's very simple and you could TurboTax. However, a relationship with a person who is a professional and dedicates their life to this is always going to be a benefit. You can always walk away. You can always say, you know what, I'm not interested. And yeah, that person put in the work and it sucks. But you can always walk away and say, you know what, I just am not interested. I did my own research and I could do this on my own. That's awesome. You should always verify if the person is qualified. You can look them up, and the law does protect you. If they're doing shenanigans, they are gonna be paying a penalty of $650 for each shenanigan. Now, the other thing I learned is, again, creating this atmosphere of trust that you want to have with the other person. And if you just don't feel the vibe, just walk away. So those are some key points that I learned from you. Now, the other thing that I learned from you that's less philosophical and more practical is there is always something you can write off. And sometimes creating a side hustle, not for the sake of creating side hustle income, but for the sake of creating a write-off opportunity. That is, I want to say gold, but I think it's 21st century, so I'm going to say that is Bitcoin right there. That is Bitcoin. Because I don't think people think about it that way, because saving money is also the same as making money. Eventually, I also plan to release a video of how I made six figures in college by saving six figures in college and avoiding and not writing it off. Sorry, I'm thinking taxes right now, but just avoiding going to a university right up front. That saved me $60,000 easy, and I got the same kind of stuff. So with taxes, it's very, very similar to that, where if you have a guide, because TurboTax can't talk back to you. I'm back now, and TurboTax can't really talk back to you. It can't like this. And again, I'm sure there's consultation calls. I'm sure there's things that you can do. So I am telling everybody, this guy is cool. I am literally gonna send my mom to talk to you, actually. So because she
Please.
has her own business and she does have a tax professional, but she is not a fan of him. Not because he's doing it, he's just slow to reply and all of that because it is a personal business. So I'm definitely gonna send my mom to you. So if you got one client, you got my mom right now. So she's gonna talk to you about like what she can do. Um, and everyone else, I mean, seriously, DM him. I will tag him in my stories, Mr. Eagle, which I met him playing Yu-Gi-Oh, by the way. And I always say that Yu-Gi-Oh prepared me for the stock market. So, it made me meet a lot of cool people. You never know where you're gonna like find your future self. So shout out to Yu-Gi-Oh. Do you have any final things that you want to add?
So again, if anybody wants any more information, please feel free to visit me online, myeagleprep.com. You can find my phone number on there. You can email me. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a talk. Let's talk about what could be the best for you. And for all the people out there who are skeptical, don't be skeptical. There's nothing that's, if somebody told you that a 5-minute phone conversation might save you thousands of dollars, what do you have to lose? So for anybody who has any questions, feel free to reach out to me and let's make something great together.
Yes, and again, on the topic of that 5-minute phone call, I always tell people who are working, $15, $20, even $25 an hour, sometimes making a brokerage account. There's like SoFi last year was giving away $50. I believe you may have even made an account back then.
Totally.
But people think about making money in terms of hours all the time. They go to their job at Target, they're making $15 an hour, but sometimes a phone call, that's why Geico is so successful right now. They're like 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on your car insurance. That is great. When I tell people, if you take 4 minutes and 36 seconds to make a Webull account, you can make $20. Like lawyers don't even make $20 every 4 minutes. That's amazing. That is $5 a minute.
Yep.
So again, like these phone calls can save you money. And I consider like I call it phone call hacking, where you call up the bill people and you try to negotiate down. You call up a tax person, such as yourself, and you try to figure out where you can save money. So that in itself is a side hustle, using your phone and calling people up and trying to save money that way. And I think that it could lead to thousands. And if the stories you shared is just, I know they're the tip of the iceberg because you told me some other stories that were just phenomenal of how a lady no, I think it was your story, like spending $4,000 extra on your own business
Sure.
saved you. You remember that story? Can you share that one real quick?
So my goal for the last couple of years, since I started my own business, since I went from being an employee of a other tax business, now having my own business, my goal has been to pay $0 in taxes. So far, I've been able to do it. Let's hope I can do it this year. I'm in the process. But one of the perks of being a tax preparer, but also one of the perks of having a tax preparer, is that you can have these conversations in the middle of the year, which means to say I try to be available, whether it's January or August or September, you call me up. So for me, I'm keeping a tab the whole year to try to see where I'm at. I have a general idea of about how much income came in, and I'm tracking expenses as closely as possible. So last year, the year's coming to an end. Still with me? There we go. Can you hear me? I lost connection. Okay.
There we go. There we go.
There we go. Okay. So come the end of the year last year, I'm looking at my situation. I know about how much money I've made. And so now I'm plugging in my information to see generally where I'm at. And I put all my information into the software and I see that I owe about $7,000. And at first I'm thinking $7,000. Okay, I guess. But wait, before I pay that money over, and this is something I want everybody to think about, is whose hands is that money better in? If you were told you can have $7,000 and you can either invest that in the government or you can invest it in yourself, you can invest it in your own business, you can invest it in stocks, whatever you want. Most people will say right off the bat, I can do a lot better with that $7,000 in the IRS. So now I have a choice. I can either figure out a way to make sure that that $7,000 is spent on me, and when I say me, of course I mean my business, or I can pay it as a bill to the IRS. So now I look at my situation, and it's not dollar for dollar, which means that if I want to save $7,000, I can't. Just spending $7,000 alone is not going to get you there, but it will go a long way. So I start to look at the situation and I think, what do I need? Well, I could really use a good computer. I'm not quick to go out and buy something expensive, but what I tell people around me is, if you ever see something that I have that looks like it's even slightly worth anything, if I have something that looks like it's worth $5, if I have a suit on, if I have a nice phone, if I have a nice computer, it's because it's a tax write-off. I'm not the type of guy to go out and buy something fancy. I'm not into any of that stuff. It doesn't do anything for me. So I had the same computer for about 4 years. It was coming to its end, and I kept putting off buying a new one. And I thought, you know what? Why don't I go out and buy the best computer? The best computer I can get that's going to work for me. So for me, because I have an iPhone, which whatever, we could go into a whole thing about Apple, but that's a conversation for another day. I love the synchronization that can be done with an iPhone and a MacBook. So I decided I want to go out and buy the best MacBook Pro I can get. So I spent about $4,000 on my laptop. It's a massive expense. But that being said, completely tax deductible. I went out and I bought a new phone for myself. I bought a new phone for my wife, and I also bought, my wife is a photographer, I bought her a new camera because she had been wanting to buy a new camera. And I started to put some money to renew all my licenses. I made sure that I was setting up everything for my ad budget for that current year. I did all these things with an understanding that I'm chipping away at that $7,000 while at the same time investing and growing my business. And come this year, I owed $0 in taxes.
Wow. That is smart, because who would have thought that you can, instead of paying the government, just pay your own business? That money is going to go one way or another. By here, you can write it off by growing your own business. And that's just fantastic. That's all I really have to say about that, because that really changed my perspective about spending. That sometimes spending more, getting fancy things, if you do it for your business, you can save so much money. And that is, we get the nice thing and we get to write it off. But you still use it for your business, so no one be cheating out there.
And then,
That's
hey,
fantastic.
now I have a nice computer that I can use for whatever I need also. It happened to be for the business, but it doesn't hurt to have a nice computer.
Right, and you can use it for other things too. So I think everybody should DM you right now. I think that people should at least get a consultation call with you, talk. Maybe it's for them, maybe it's not, but like you said, they can always walk away.
Totally.
Even if you put in a little bit of work, they could walk away. I think it's worth building a relationship with a human being rather than with an app. Again, if your situation is very simple, yes, stick with TurboTax. But if you have some nuance, or if you're ready for some nuance, you can definitely create a side hustle. This guy is going to teach you, Mr. Eagle, he's going to teach you how to write it off, right? Sometimes you want to create a side hustle just so you can have an opportunity to write off your new computer, right? If you're doing something like tutoring, you might need a brand new computer so you can write it off. And the computer might cost way more than your whole side hustle even generated. So I'm sure there's all sorts of tips and tricks that like TurboTax just is not going to walk you through. So that is awesome. And one last question. I know you have calls coming in, but what is the max write-off you can have without registering a company?
So in general, there isn't a quote unquote limit for how much you can write off. There is a certain amount of income. I believe it's $100,000 profit, that once you've made $100,000 profit from your business, you have to set up either an LLC or a C Corp. Sorry. So
no worries.
There will come a time where you have to establish a business. But up until $100,000 profit, you can absorb it into your own personal tax return. Think of it like making yourself a 1099 at the end of the year. The same way. Your social, so for those people who have looked at a W-2 or looked at a 1099, there is something called an EIN number, which is your electronic identification number. It works the same as your social, which means to say when you open up a business account, the same way when if you walk into a bank, you'll put down your social, you'll put down your EIN. So you can do the same thing when you file taxes when it comes to self-employment. You can work off of your social. So you can do this for a while, and you can, as far as write-offs, you can write off all of it. You could even technically declare a loss. Now, audits is a different conversation. There will come a point where you are in more of the red zone for audits. So I'll give you an example. I have a customer who for the last couple of years has had to declare a $150,000 loss. And so they are audit ready all the time. We have them set up because I know that they're very far into the red zone as far as audit potential. But that being said, they're so organized that if they ever got an audit, they really wouldn't have to do a thing other than stick some stuff in the mail. And so you can set yourself up like that as well if you have to declare a loss. It all comes down to organization. But there isn't really a max as far as how much you can write off as long as it's true.
Wow. You know, I'm just getting so many ideas because like a lot of people in like even the personal finance debt-free community on Instagram who have big pages, they're doing little side hustles to monetize that. And I'm just thinking like, wow, you could write off your phone, you could write off your computer, you could write off if you film in your car. Jay Millennial's not in here, but he posts a lot about his car. He could probably write off part of his car. So that is really cool to think about, and I think I will be contacting you as well. Although I'm very far from monetization, I focus on providing free information, having lives like this where I have a professional also give free information, things that I don't know about. But if you want to donate some money to me, just DM me from my Webull account and you will get 2 free stocks. I will get 2 free stocks. That is super swell for everyone. So with that, I think we saved people thousands of dollars. Like this hour saved people thousands of dollars if they just apply. So that is another way where I'm talking about phone hacking, how looking at your iPhone for an hour can save you thousands of dollars. Yes,
Sure.
every day, gal. And I've known Mr. Eagle for years, actually. We haven't spoken in a while, but we used to play Yu-Gi-Oh together. And 10 years later, he saw me posting about stocks, and he was like, taxes,
Well,
though. And that's how we managed to link back up. So thank you for all the wisdom that you shared. I think it will go a long way. Again, DM this guy. He is amazing. I will also tag his username upstairs in my stories, so that will be there, and you can click it, go to his account, and DM him. He is very accessible, and that is fantastic. So thank you so, so much.
thank you to you, and thank you to everybody who tuned in. And again, if you want to get more information, you want to contact me, let's have a conversation. You can visit me at myeagleprep.com, or you can call me at 310-869-2083.
Maybe I can pin that for a second. Can you write it in the
Sure.
comments? And also, there's so much happening in the stock market today. Today was such a rare day. Like, when I woke up last night looking at it, it looked like today was going to be a blood bath. And it opened up so much in the red that it was terrifying. However, when I checked at like 10 o'clock our time, I was like, oh my gosh, there are so many gains. Cindy, I see you, Cindy. Just talked about taxes and how spending money can actually save you. This guy bought a brand new Apple MacBook for $4,000, and it ended up saving him money. He also hooked his wife up with a camera for her photography. Just so much wisdom here, and so many things that I didn't even know about. And like, I'm obsessed with saving money. So it goes to show you that sometimes you can save money by spending money if you have a business. So that is awesome. I don't know, were you able to type your phone number in there?
I did. I put the message. It's still towards the bottom.
Okay. Mine might be lagging, so I don't see it at this moment. But can you say it out loud?
Sure. If you want any more information, feel free to call me. You can also find me online at myeagleprep.com. My phone number is 310-869-2083.
Awesome. Let me pin that. Okay, so I'm going to stay online for a little bit. I know you got business to take care of, so thank you so much for your time. I'm just going to be here for 5 minutes just for people to get that phone number down so they could text you. Is texting fine?
Texting's great.
Awesome.
Text,
So again,
WhatsApp, email. If there's a way to contact me, make it happen, and we'll have a good conversation.
yeah, and the live will be up for another 2 minutes because Instagram shuts you down after about an hour. So that phone number is there. Again, you can DM him. I think if you're watching this live, you can exit the live and click his profile, and it'll take you straight to his profile, and you could DM him. He's not as active on Instagram as he should be. We've been talking
Coming
about
soon.
that. But it will grow. It will definitely grow. And because you're providing a service that is actually extremely beneficial to people, taxes is something like knowing how a car works, especially in a capitalist society, extremely valuable, practical information. And a 5 to 10 minute phone call can save people thousands of dollars. Again, this is not sponsored. I get nothing out of this. I only bring up people that I believe in. I believe that there is a powerful message here and it can help people a lot. And Everyday Finance Gal says she can help you with the IG. She's
Get in
actually
touch.
developing an Instagram like coaching service. I probably shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. But she's working on like helping people like create really amazing Instagrams. She talked to me before and it really helped get my message further